Welcome to my biggest, most anticipated showcase video I have ever done to celebrate tonight's launch of Avengers Infinity War, the culmination of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe as started 10 years ago, and for this showcase, 4 years planning and 5 months in the making, I've assembled 15 new custom Lego minifigures and 24 in total. Captain America, the Iron Man Mark 50 suit, the Iron Spider suit, Bucky Barnes, the Falcon, War Machine, Black Widow, Hawkeye kind of, the Hulk, Scarlet Witch, the Vision, Thor, Star-Lord, Groot, and the Mad Titan himself wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos. And stand-in figures that I've already made in the past include Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Loki, Gamora, Drax the Destroyer, Rocket Raccoon, Mantis, Nebula, and Civil War Ant-Man. So they're all still here, but their costumes didn't change, and so neither did my figures. But I've been waiting to do this since 2014, and I've worked practically every day since the middle of January to pull this off. Despite family emergencies, the release date being moved up by a full week, and having to move just recently, I made it, and I have you guys to thank for getting me here. Thank you for supporting me through the entire process. And finally, I am so excited to announce MGFcustoms.com is now live, and I am officially on Patreon. I'll talk more about it at the end. However, the links are below. So, with all of that, here we go. Okay, so first up, Captain America. This figure is heavily inspired by my Civil War cap. I used a lot of the same designs here. However, of course, I did make the necessary design changes to update it for his appearance in Avengers Infinity War, obviously in the form of removing the star, painting a little bit of the scales and the torn areas of the suit, adding to my own dark blue highlights. I have my own 3D pouches and straps on the front and back of the torso. Every figure in this showcase, by the way, is almost entirely painted if it wasn't obvious already. You can see this time I did paint the arms to have the actual Avengers patches pretty much removed, even though they're not really even there at all, or the indentation of where they were in the movie. I decided it would still be cool to at least paint the spot where they used to be. And also I do have a brand new fully painted face on Cap this time, which I'm pretty proud of. I even have some texturing running through the beard, and also I do have his actual wrists exposed there, along with detail painted onto both hands. And you can see connected to his hands are the 2 shields gifted to him by Black Panther, the 2 new black vibranium shields, and they were pretty much made out of standard Lego shields. I'm talking like the Knights shields. However, I did make the actual shield portions themselves out of styrene, and then I glued those to the handles of Lego shields. And then, of course, the legs fully painted. Again, only minor changes from the Civil War costume, since the suit really doesn't change all too much in Infinity War for the most part. And so again, just a lot of inspiration was taken from that figure for this one. So yeah, man, crazy to think this could be one of my last Chris Evans Captain America figures. Next up, the Iron Man Mark 50 suit, and as I think I made pretty clear in the intro, all of these figures were a lot of work. And so to ensure that I was able to post this video around the release of Infinity War, I actually outsourced some work to one of my closest friends and one of the best customizers in this community. My buddy Andrew over at AV Figures did handle some of the more complicated elements on a few of the minifigures that you'll see throughout this showcase, like the wings on the Iron Man Mark 50, some other things on Black Widow and Thor that you will see later on, but I cannot thank him enough for all the work that he put into these. So one thing that I definitely had to make sure to do when making this new Iron Man suit was avoid using an Amazing Armory Mark 7 torso piece. And if you're not familiar with what these are, they're a custom cast version of the Avengers Mark 7 torso armor, and I kept repurposing it on every custom Iron Man minifigure that I had made from Iron Man 3 all the way to Spider-Man Homecoming, and it definitely had to end for Infinity War, especially because of how skin tight Tony's new
Andrew's suit is. The new bleeding edge armor is not bulky at all. However, in order to balance out the proportions of Lego's Iron Man helmet to the rest of the minifigure, I not only sanded down the sides of Lego's helmet, but I also sculpted on the shoulders and a little bit of definition onto the front of the torso just to make sure the minifigure still looked consistent, and I think it really worked out. The minimal sculpting work, I think, is what really keeps this minifigure still looking just as sleek as he appears in the movie. And I also found a non-toxic metallic red paint to use as the primary color for this minifigure, which was super important to me because that's something I always skipped out on previous Iron Man suits, and they always just kind of use Lego's standard base colors. Regardless, if we remove the helmet, you can see that not only have I kept Lego's new Infinity War Tony Stark head, just painted a red neck around it. This also includes the HUD on the other side, of course, but I actually painted in my own HUD as I've done on all my Iron Man suits, well, most of them. And you can see this time I've updated the design and I've used some metallic blues and some metallic reds as opposed to the standard matte red and blue colors that I've used on previous HUDs. And so I'm really happy with that update. But how did Andrew actually manage to pull this off, and how do they look so damn good? Well, Andrew actually designed them in Adobe Illustrator and then sent them to his laser cutter, a pretty complex process that I sure as hell would not have been able to pull off in my wildest dreams. But Andrew is an incredibly talented customizer, like I said, so he managed to make these look absolutely incredible. One hurdle that we did encounter, though, in making these was how they would actually be attached to the back of Iron Man. And so what I decided would be the safest bet to attach these to the back was to actually sculpt a base for them that the wings could then be attached into. Andrew did exactly that, and then I actually used a little cut up bit of Cape Madness fabric that I glued to the back, painted a metallic red, and it ended up being the perfect idea, and it completely worked. Both of us were a little bit skeptical on the idea, but we both knew it would be a safer bet than just gluing them to the back, because with the wrong amount of pressure, the wings would still break off. So that's why I came up with this whole idea, and he executed it perfectly. Removing them, though, you can see that underneath I do have the back still fully painted, and this design is actually inspired by Lego's own Mark 50, and then the design work does continue all throughout the legs, also inspired by Lego's Mark 50 Iron Man suit, and those designs again do continue around all four sides of the minifigure's legs. So an incredibly complicated Iron Man suit that took two customizers to pull off, but I'm so proud of the end result, and I'm going to stall for a couple seconds while I reassemble the figure half-assed. Okay. Our third figure I am super excited for, the Iron Spider suit. I've been waiting to do this since Spider-Man Homecoming last year, and you can see this was one hell of a task. Just getting through the actual Spidey suit alone is already insane because of all the webbing you have to paint. However, then came the actual pincers, and thank God for Mini-Mates, because once I got past all this incredibly time-consuming paint work with the metallic red, same metallic red I used on the Iron Man Mark 50 you just saw a second ago, by the way, and all the webbing and everything, the little, energy sources that you can see in the eyes and the webbing all around the head, all of it, I finally had to do the pincers, and again, thank God for Mini-Mates, because they make some pretty cool figures, and sometimes they make accessories that are to scale with Lego minifigures, and sometimes even compatible to the point where they actually have a very similar neck post and neck brace with actual pincers that can be I should move this. That can be individually attached into the back, so each one of these pincers can actually come out and be adjusted or repositioned, and it is just a fantastic piece. If you want to make your own Iron Spider suit, I highly recommend you pick up the Mini-Mates Iron Spider minifigure before doing so, because this entire apparatus is just fantastic, and it took me 7 hours to paint, so that was not fun. What was even less fun was finding out that it turns out all the pincers are actually gold, apparently, based on Hot Toys figure. However, I painted these long before Hot Toys revealed their figure, and I was like, you know what, I based mine off promo art, and I still really do like the style of them, even though apparently they are all gold in the movie. I'm not changing it. And also, you guessed it, the webbing does wrap all around all four sides of the minifigure's legs and everywhere else. I don't think I showed you the back. Here we go. There it is. Painted that as well. By the way, way harder than the front. Next, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, White Wolf, whatever, was a pretty straightforward and relatively simple minifigure to make. There were some complications, like when I posted the first preview photo, nobody liked the hair that I went with, and everybody wanted me to paint a beard on. Then I tried to paint a beard on, it didn't look right, so then I tried a different style of beard, and this beard actually ended up being the correct beard, so beards. Regardless, I also had some help from my buddy Eric, who actually just sent out this Luke Skywalker hairpiece. These are not that easy to come by. Even though the set's only like $30, you'd think more people would have it for sale. Ultimately, he sent it out, and this was the hairpiece that I wound up going with after photoshopping the color scheme onto it quite a few times for various preview photos. Nobody actually needs to know that. Anyway, the rest of the figure is pretty straightforward. I painted the torso, I painted the arms. You can see I actually used a legitimate Lego chrome arm from like the older chrome stormtroopers. Those are also no longer easy to come by. So this might be one of the last times I get to do this, but I also did implement the gold plating and the darker gunmetal plating on there as well. And I think the design and the entire arm turned out looking pretty cool. And unfortunately, I did have a lack of reference when making Bucky. So as you can see, the back is pretty inaccurate, and this is just really not how it looks in the movie. And then of course, as soon as I painted the torso, Mini-Mates came out with their design, and it was actually exactly what I was looking for, but it was too late, obviously. Anyway, you can see the legs are pretty straightforward, standard, brown cargo pants. I did make the holster on the side, and the gun, his giant machine gun, is actually a Brick Arms M249 that I cut the back off of. I did some basic painting, and I also stuck an MP5 mag in there because I really didn't want it to be as big as the real one actually is in the movie, because it would probably be a little bit too big for this minifigure to hold, and I kind of wanted him to be able to hold the gun in positions like this. So yeah, that's really it though for Bucky. Also, by the way, forgot to mention the head, the base of it was actually Poe Dameron, and I painted on my own eyebrows and mouth. Next up, Sam Wilson, the Falcon, this time featuring a brand new set of wings with a much more accurate cut. And I also did update the torso to be the official Lego torso. Now that they changed the base color from light gray to dark gray, I was able to repurpose it on my figure, add some painted details, and I did the exact same with the actual head from the original Civil War set, sporting that aggressive facial expression. I painted the beard on, used the fin hair, which I thought was the best possible option, as opposed to painting the hair like I did for Civil War a couple of years back. Speaking of Civil War, I did actually copy the exact same leg design from my original Civil War Falcon because I thought the leg design was still up to date and current and really still did work. And that does pretty much go for the arms as well. However, I did change a couple things in the form of the shoulder pads and some dark red toward the top. Brick Arms mini Uzis, tiny tactical glove tops, which you probably have already seen on Cap earlier in the showcase. And then, of course, the wings. Good God, were these time consuming. This time I wanted to paint them in a much more accurate color. However, that meant, of course, painting all of these designs yet again, and it was incredibly time consuming. I mean, good God, then sculpting the jetpack onto the back and painting that up with as much detail as I possibly could. It was just a really insane process, but just to give you a really good look at how much detail is actually on these wings, it was insane. It took days for me to finally finish, but I'm so glad that I did make a new Falcon. I think these updates were absolutely necessary and really were needed after my Civil War Falcon becoming so dated in just the past couple of years, but obviously excluding the legs because I ultimately did choose to stick with those along with the arms as well. So brand new Falcon figure, so happy with it. And if you want to see really quick how the actual wings attach, it's just basically the wings are glued onto a neck brace, and that's how that works. So cannot wait to see Mackie as Falcon again, this time dealing with aliens. And now, the figure that almost didn't make it into this video, War Machine, featuring digital camo painted all throughout the entirety of the suit. Well, almost the entirety, but that's actually, believe it or not, easier to do than painting on most precise designs. Precise designs like the ones that used to be on the front of the torso armor, and in fact, they're still there. However, now they're really difficult to make out because of all the digital camo that I painted pretty much in and around those designs that used to be there on the original painted Clone Army Customs torso piece. And I did decide to use a Clone Army Customs torso piece, and I decided not to sand down the sides of the helmet on this one because unlike the Mark 50, Rhodes still has a lot of the bulk in his armor. He still has the bulky torso armor, and so I decided it was necessary to utilize an actual torso piece. Other painted details that I really like on this figure, of course, are the 004, because this is, of course, the Mark 4 War Machine suit, and then the design that I painted on the left arm, that was pretty interesting. Painting stars is never fun. The actual gun I put on originally, then I took took it off when I looked at my reference and I thought he didn't have it anymore, and then a bunch of people pointed out to me that it was actually going to be retractable in the movie, so then I glued it back on. It was a whole mess, but I managed to clean it up and paint the whole thing with a little bit more of a different paint job this time, with some red toward the edge and some silver and some other things that weren't there for the original Civil War version of this gun that I painted. And it's probably not overly accurate, but it was the best I can do. And if I'm honest, I'm not gonna lie, speaking of Civil War, I low-key decided to use the Civil War face mask because I couldn't get a new one in from Bricklink fast enough, and so I do have the outdated HUD design still painted into this one because this is the same face mask from War Machine 2 years ago. But Rhodey, there he is, Colonel James Rhodes. Not gonna lie, guys, I think Rhodey's time is up, and I'd be pretty surprised if he made it past Avengers 4. Next up, the new Black Widow minifigure, Andrew and I's second collab figure of this showcase, sporting her own custom batons. Just to get these out of the way, even though they are so awesome, you can see Andrew pretty much made his own handles for these, and then the rest is comprised of micromagnets. So not only are each one of those rings adjustable, but they can actually be connected to form the longer bow staff, which I think is just such a cool feature, and I'm so glad he was able to implement it and actually make it happen for this figure. But the rest you can see is pretty straightforward, all fully painted. My own custom painted green tactical vest painted onto an area-like curved torso, and the front is based off of Lego's design, the back is based off of the Hot Toys figure, and that does include the 3D baton holster pouch that she kind of has, like the backpack, which is super cool. But the hairpiece ended up being super controversial amongst a lot of people, which is totally fine. But ultimately, even after I tried a lot of alternative hair pieces to the custom sculpted one provided by Andrew here, I ultimately decided that this was really the one to go with because it does really capture the hairstyle. While it may not look like an actual Lego hairpiece, it is definitely more of Andrew's styles to sculpt hairpieces in this way, and I still think that it looks pretty cool, and so I decided to keep it. And you can see, however, the head is actually the same exact head that I did carry over from the Civil War Black Widow, this time with the blonde eyebrows. I brightened up the pupils a little bit, and I did repaint the lips again as well. And also you'll notice the 3D elements such as the tasers on her wrists, the tiny tactical glove tops, the holsters on the sides of her legs, all glued on and fully painted. But one of the more complicated accessories on this figure was definitely this strap, because you can see the strap that wraps around the entire figure was actually made from a cut up Cape Madness waist cape. And so I had to take an actual Lego waist cape like you would see on, like Darth Vader or something. You've probably seen waist capes before, especially on my figures in the past, and I had to trim it down to basically become a strap that would wrap around the minifigure's legs in a slanted position. And so that was fun and definitely not easy, but I got through it and finally completed this figure thanks to Andrew and all of his help, and I think it turned out really awesome. Hey everybody, I found Hawkeye, or at least this is just my Civil War Hawkeye with a new head. Is it scummy of me that I consider this to be a new figure, just to kind of say I made 15? Anyway, you don't need me to tell you how noticeably absent both he and Ant-Man have been from Infinity War's marketing, but the Russos have a plan. Hawkeye's on his own adventure, and Jeremy Renner successfully covered up his Ronin costume on set. So this is all I had to go off of the Vanity Fair cover from earlier this year, where he appeared wearing his Civil War suit with the new hairstyle. So that's pretty much what I did. I took my Civil War Hawkeye. I wouldn't change much on it even now, 2 years later. I think it's still a pretty snazzy figure. However, thanks to my buddy Andy, Delta Customs, who is also the one who recommended that I actually use the Iron Spider pincers from the Minimates figure, he recommended that I use this head from that collectible minifigures soccer series that was not available in the US for whatever reason. I didn't actually research it, I just ordered this head off Bricklink, and then I took a drill to a Sleepy hairpiece, got rid of the sides, painted the sides onto the head, and new Hawkeye figure, I guess. All right, here we go with the Hulk, our big green Mark Ruffalo, probably the easiest big fig I've ever made. I literally did this in like 2 days, not even, because there just really isn't a whole lot to do. It's very, very simple in comparison to Gladiator Hulk that I did last year. That was 2 months of on and off work. This was 2 days of on and off work. So I started by taking some inspiration from my buddy Chris over on Instagram. I'll drop a link to his profile down in the description below. Incredible customizer, and I did exactly what he did by sanding the back back of the hair before painting my own matte black color over it, and that also includes some gray highlights on the sides. And then I did fill in the arms, like the big arm sockets that big figs have. It's kind of like protocol now. It just looks better to have those areas filled in on the arms. I painted the pants. I painted every one of those tears pretty much all randomly. It's not that difficult for me to paint those on. And I painted some very simple detail on the pants that does go all the way around, and I pretty much painted whatever I could make out with the reference that I had, and I gave it a black wash, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't anything else to do, and that was it for the Hulk, man. I mean, it was pretty straightforward. Okay, so Scarlet Witch, one of the simplest figures in this video, despite the detailed torso. I really wanted to improve upon my Civil War Scarlet Witch. While that one was okay, it was just really badly under detailed, not too vibrant, and the face was really weird, so I wanted to fix all of that with this second version of the character, obviously now sporting the lighter hair color that I did paint onto this hairpiece. Speaking of this hairpiece, it is really just not great for use on custom minifigures, because not only does it tear paint away if you don't properly sand the inside, but it really doesn't work well for painted faces, which is why I decided to not paint this face, and I actually used Jyn Erso's face, which was actually just recently used on Black Widow for the Infinity War sets, believe it or not. However, I thought that it really worked for an aggressive facial expression on Wanda Maximoff, and so I did exactly that. I repainted the lips, and I don't have to worry about it destroying any face that I might have painted for this figure. Anyway, you can see the rest is pretty much self-explanatory. All red lines painted throughout the entirety of the costume just to make it more vibrant and stand out a little bit more. The legs are very straightforward, not featuring a lot of detail, just like her actual boots in the movie. However, if we remove the hairpiece, you can see that I did actually trim down the Cape Madness trench coat before painting it, and I made it so that it would obviously accommodate this hairpiece. And this is actually a trace of my Civil War Scarlet Witch trench coat, so that older figure did at least help make this one in some way. And of course, here is the detailed torso with much more accurate lines, and you can just see the red lines that are obviously all outlined running throughout the torso design, just making it look so much better than the original. And I'm really happy with how this figure turned out, and I really am not looking forward to the scene when Thanos finally, inevitably, I think anyway, gets the Mind Stone and she has to cope with whatever may happen to Vision. Speaking of the Vision, I didn't need to change the background, right? I mean, him and Wanda are kind of, it's fine. So anyway, this has got to be the best figure that I have made in this video, and just in terms of colors, because I'm so happy with how the magenta color that I was able to get through mixing contrast with the sand green of the body, and of course all the purple highlights that run throughout the design, the gold on the cape, just all of it. This has got to be the ultimate upgrade from my really crappy one that I did for Age of Ultron in 2015, a few years back. And you can see that one of the coolest things about the figure are obviously these little like ear pads that do actually stick out by use of just some sealant. So not only was I able to paint those on, but I was also able to create the exact same effect while protecting them, and I think that has got to be the cherry on top with this minifigure. And then of course you can see all the detail on the actual cape, and this is just a standard cape from Cape Madness, trimmed down to size just a little bit, painted gold with all the metallic red striping that you see on both the back and on the front here. I do have a pair of tiny tactical glove tops painted in magenta. I recolored his eyes to be a metallic blue. I also recolored the Mind Stone to be a gold color, and then everything else is fully painted on. That obviously includes everything that you see on the minifigure's body. That includes everything on that wraps around the entirety of the head. Painting all of that on was definitely pretty interesting, but well worth it. And then of course you can see that the designs on the legs do wrap around all four sides, and so I am so happy with how the Vision turned out here. This minifigure, I honestly, it exceeded my expectations. I didn't think it would wind up looking this good, but I am really curious to see what will ultimately end up happening to poor Vision by the end of either Infinity War or Avengers 4. The King of Asgard, or the King of the People of Asgard, Thor, and also the final collab figure between Andrew and I for this showcase video. One final thank you to Andrew for everything that he did for this video, from Iron Man's air flaps to Black Widow's hair and her staff to the Stormbreaker here. He just did some incredible and fantastic work, and I just cannot thank him enough. This Stormbreaker is just an excellent piece. I mean, he did an incredible job, all fully sculpted, everything on the bottom of the hand handle and on the top. The actual like axe portion itself, like the blade, that's actually made out of styrene, I believe, which is super, super great. I absolutely think he knocked it out of the park with the Stormbreaker, and it was great to finally paint it for this minifigure. So again, one last thank you to Andrew. I will be dropping links to his store and everything that he does down in the description below. Make sure you check it out. And the rest of the figure is pretty straightforward. All fully painted. I bet you couldn't guess. I did take a similar approach with the hairstyle, like with the Thor Ragnarok version of this figure, sanded down the sides and also the top before painting it. That also included recoloring the actual hair on the face to match the hairpiece. And then, of course, this time I got to make and glue the eye patch on and paint that up. So that was pretty cool. And of course, I do have the scar on there now. Was waiting to do that ever since I saw the ending of Thor Ragnarok. And then the cape is a couple of different Cape Madness capes, and however this time I did actually paint a little bit onto the back of this one, and so yeah, it's two capes glued together to make sure that the darker gunmetal cape here would not show through on the back here. So I think that definitely succeeded and looks pretty cool. My first time actually painting on muscle arms. Normally those would be printed, but this is my first time when I actually ran out of the printed muscle arms, so I'm painting them from here on out. But yeah, there he is. And our last actor, named Chris, our first member of the Guardians, Star-Lord. There he is. This is a really half-assed figure, and when I say half-assed, I mean half-assed for all the right reasons, because their costumes, the Guardians' costumes, do not change from Volume 2 to Infinity War, even though 4 years has passed. It's kind of gross, but regardless, I had to translate that over onto my minifigure, and I feel like the Guardians 2 figures I made last year were practically made yesterday, because I mean, I don't know how May of last year was already like a year ago. I don't know what happened. So basically what I'm saying is I carried over the exact same pair of legs, the same blasters, and even the same helmet. So the only thing new here is the jacket, the arms, and the head. And it still works, though, because I wouldn't change anything about this pair of legs, and I certainly would not have changed anything about these blasters or the helmet. Like I said, it feels like 2017 was yesterday, so I really wouldn't do anything differently here with those reused parts. And you guys over on Instagram seem to be okay with it for me to save time. So the face, however, is the brand new Owen face from the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom sets, and I repainted the hair on it, the stash, and the sideburns, and that was $13 on eBay to get it early that I'll never get back. But the jacket is a modified Cape Madness jacket. It started as a trench coat. Obviously, I trimmed it down to size to make it the jacket that you see. Obviously, this is the zipped up version of the jacket that I already did for Volume 2 last year, but of course, I do have the flap on the front, and it was a whole tedious process to get it to look like that, but ultimately, I managed to pull it off, and I got everything positioned just right, all the detail painted on, and I'm super, super happy with it. The arms are the exact same design from my Guardians 2 Star-Lord, and the same can be said for the back. I really meant it when I said I wouldn't really change much about the figure. I just wanted to make this new variant with the updated head. The final actual minifigure before we move on to the big guy with the gauntlet, Teenage Groot, was an incredibly time-consuming minifigure to make, painting everything on here line for line, every green tint, every bit of moss that you see, all fully painted by me, even these freaking rings on the top of the head, all fully painted, and it took quite a few days. One of the major things that I had to consider before making Teenage Groot was that I did not want to add anything to his body, and that means I didn't want to add any mass, any sculpting, or anything that would bulk up the minifigure more than its standard like a minifigure already is, because in Infinity War, Groot is tall, thin, and lanky. There's no bulk on him in this movie, and so it really wouldn't make sense to add on any vines or any like bits of bark or anything like that, and so what I decided to do was engrave everything. So basically, I took a drill to the entire minifigure, the torso, the arms, the legs, pretty much everything except the belt. It even includes the eyes on the actual head from Lego, because I not only dug out a little bit up here with the drill, but I also engraved the actual eye sockets, and that was definitely something I really wanted to do, because the whole goal of drilling everything and engraving everything was to basically capture the same definition as seen on Groot, again without adding anything to the minifigure itself, and I think I really pulled it off. If you really, take a look at some of the angles on the minifigure, you can see where that definition shows up, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. And it was a really messy process at first, but ultimately it really paid off, and I honestly thought that at this point for Infinity War I would be making another adult Groot all these years later, but Flora Colossus don't grow that quickly. So yeah, that's it. There he is, Groot. By the way, here's a look at the insides of the legs. I still sometimes forget to show these areas, but they are still there as well. I always wondered what my Thanos Big Fig would look like 4 years later when it came time to finally make him for Avengers Infinity War. I certainly did not expect him to be bald, and I definitely did not expect him to just pretty much be wearing an armored tank top, but he's on a spiritual journey or something when obtaining the Infinity Stones, or at least that's what the Russo bros told us. So, given that this is his appearance for the majority of the film, this is of course the variation I decided to go with as opposed to the armor he wears in the opening scenes, and also as opposed to the flashback sequence which takes place about 2 decades or so before the movie. However, to get started, I immediately took inspiration from Chris McLovin's Thanos, which is incredible, with a light up Infinity Gauntlet, by the way. I think he set like the gold standard for what a Thanos Big Fig should look like, and so I took that and made my own version, as you can see here, as accurate as I could possibly make it, beginning with an Age of Ultron Hulk. So yeah, just to give you an idea of how much work went into this, it was originally the Hulk. I took a Dremel tool and pretty much attacked the non-removable hairpiece on that Big Fig, smoothed it over with a filer, sculpted over that, sculpted a chin, got to work on the rest of the sculpted armor, the Infinity Gauntlet, and everything in between before finally painting the Mad Titan himself, and of course, the Infinity Gauntlet. There it is, the weapon that controls the universe with all 6 Infinity Stones assembled into its Lego form. You can see that what I ended up doing was actually painting this iconic piece of pop culture in Lego in metallic brown, because in the MCU, the Infinity Gauntlet is a much more gritty and kind of like darker gold color, and so I decided that instead of using gold or any kind of vibrant yellow color for the Infinity Gauntlet, I would use an actual more screen accurate color to start with, and then use proper gold colors as a secondary for all the detail in between. And of course, from left to right, the Time Stone, the Power Stone, the Space Stone, Reality Stone, Soul Stone, and the Mind Stone. Poor vision. But I definitely wanted to make sure these looked like the actual Infinity Stones and not just little painted colors. And so what I did was I pretty much took any kind of transparent Lego piece that had the color I was looking for, whether it was a lightsaber blade or a piece from a spring-loaded shooter. I got to work with a drill bit, tore it apart, and basically sanded up little pieces of them until I got the exact shapes of the Infinity Stones that I was looking for to be sculpted into the gauntlet itself. After the fact, I actually got the Mind Stone from a little pack of like gems that look exactly like this in a baggie, and surprisingly, it was the exact size that I was looking for. It fit in place perfectly, but I am so satisfied with the Infinity Gauntlet and how it finally ended up looking in the end. But the rest of the Big Fig is pretty straightforward. You can see all the additional sculpting on the back and the detail that was painted on the top, along with the sculpted collar that is integrated into the back of the armor. But other than that, guys, that is it for Thanos himself. I've been waiting to finally see Josh Brolin portray the character in a full-length film since 2014, and after all these years, I absolutely cannot wait to finally see the havoc he will wreak on the Marvel Cinematic Universe tonight. Stand-in minifigures whose costumes did not change but have still been here supporting the new minifigures from the shadows of past showcases include Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Loki, Gamora, Drax, Mantis, Nebula, Rocket, and Civil War Ant-Man, because why not? So, I've literally worked through the night to finish this video, and now it's finally time to wrap this up. It's over. He has all the stones. Guys, we're here. Whoa, liking the new style, Rogers. Where have you all been? Cap, I know you're getting kind of old, but we signed the Accords a couple years ago. You're serious. Took the UN a couple days to sign off on our involvement. He's about to wipe out half the universe. Now I just snap my fingers, and you all cease to exist. I can't actually snap my fingers. Alright, Arrow Guy, here we go again! Wipe out half the universe now!
No, what have you done?
Peter, their contracts are still expiring! Oh, shit!
Alright, guys, and there you go. That's it for the Avengers Infinity War showcase. Thank you for sticking around for that entire thing. I am completely exhausted. But now it's finally time to take this even further so that I can continue making custom minifigures into the far future. So with MGFcustoms.com now live, you'll soon be able to buy shirts, prints, cups, and other stuff featuring my figures. And as much as I wish I could sell custom minifigures, these take an unbelievable amount of time to make. And I'm also a super sentimental guy, but hey, now with Patreon, you can gain access to all kinds of cool stuff early, like daily updates on new showcases, exclusive vlogs, behind the scenes photos and videos, access to my own personal roadmap of showcases into the next year. But please, don't feel pressured to take part if you really don't want to. Even $1 a month will get you access to a really good portion of it. Patreon is an amazing platform that keeps so many small creators like me going, and this is just my way of ensuring I'll always be able to paint many people into infinity. Sorry, that was really bad. But when the MCU started, I remember I just loved the first 2 Iron Man films, and I had no idea that they were building toward the Avengers and creating the Marvel Cinematic Universe until a friend of mine finally pulled me out of my Star Wars The Clone Wars bliss and got me to watch the first trailer. But I just remember being so surprised. I didn't even know who Thor or Hawkeye were yet, but seeing them all in that one iconic shot for the first time changed the game for me. And I never would have thought that my first 2 custom Iron Man minifigures would have led to all of this. My own cinematic universe of MCU showcases. But I do think Marvel changed everything for everyone, and even if all of the Avengers don't make it past this film or the next, I think we're all going to be completely blown away by what we're about to experience. So, I'm going to head to the theater. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Alright, bye-bye.
Dad, this is my boyfriend.
Hey, Mr. Thanos, it is an absolute... Whoa!
Dad, what did you do?
I sent him to the other side of the universe. Ah! Finally! Get back in there! No! Spoiler alert, okay, Andrew, the magnets are cool, but good God, dude. Batons themselves out of Where's the Mind Stone? I don't know, which one do you think it is? Ah! I basically still had to go back on everything I just said earlier at the Black Widow and just get them out of the Russo bros have a plan. All around the sides and the top of the head. Wow, we're totally out of focus. I didn't even realize. That's just fantastic. As long as one man stands against... Wow, this contract expiration stuff is great.